Enshrouded has me hooked. This game has had me by the balls for the last 2 weeks. I've been playing it nonstop. For those of you who have not yet been sucked into Enshrouded, this is a massive open-world survival game that is currently in early access, but receiving constant updates from the developers. New zones, new mechanics, UI updates keep getting pushed out, making this game even better. Did that group 2-week Minecraft gaming session just end? Well, I think this game can fill in that hole for you, as it's co-op for up to 16 players. No chance am I getting 16 of the boys together to play this at the same time, but shout out to any of those of you who can. The main priority for me with these types of games will always be, is the combat fun? And to answer that question, yes, the combat is great. Players can choose skills from a large skill tree that focus on 3 distinct groups, which are your classic ranged, melee, and magic classes. And from here, you can mix and match abilities however you like with the skill points that you gain quite frequently for level ups and other objectives. The only issue that I have with the combat is with tab targeting, which feels off to me as you can never really target the enemy that you want, but it doesn't interfere often as I just don't use it anymore. I can free target enemies and that works just fine. Exploration is highly encouraged as the world is dense with landmarks and points of interest, teeming with unique things to discover. Every area seems to have its own quest, as well as lore present, in addition to several hidden chests if you spend the time to search for it. This stops the game from feeling lifeless as opposed to the industry standards copy and pasted structures around the map for most games. You find an empty fort and you're like, hey, what happened here? And as you explore the area, you find letters, notes, pieces of lore that explain exactly what happened and why it's deserted. The survival elements are there for those of you who prioritize it, but they don't get in the way of gameplay like I've seen from other survival games, where you constantly have to cater to all of your different survival meters that display elements like your hunger, thirst, body temperature, depends on the game, but stuff like that. In Enshrouded, the player is rewarded with different buffs, depending on the different types of foods you eat, if you're well rested or not. If you do prefer, starvation can be turned on with the different difficulty modes, so you can always adjust that depending on how you want to play. Speaking of the difficulty, the game can be easily adjusted for players of all different skill levels within the main menu through an adjustable difficulty slider. If the game feels too easy, bump it up, and if it's too hard, go ahead and draw those settings back. The crafting in this game, in my opinion, is perfect. It's not immediately complicated as the player is slowly introduced to new crafting elements as the game progresses, stopping them from being overwhelmed at the get-go. And eventually, it opens up and gives the player a ton of options for different weapons, armors, consumables, building materials. You get the idea. New materials can be accessed as you progress through the increasingly difficult zones of the game, which lets you create that next piece of gear, which provides a nice little upgrade for your character. I usually shy away from this part of the game, but Enshrouded does building a little differently, as it gives the player a huge amount of flexibility in building options that I haven't seen in other games before. You can choose between a large number of different structure types that you can use to create nearly any builds that you can come up with. I'm a huge fan of the grappling hooks, which you can get pretty early on in the game. More on those later. But I went ahead and created my own little obstacle course for them with a nice perch to view the world from at the end of it. Go ahead and build a cool looking base, and as you progress, you can rescue NPCs that will start to fill up your base. These NPCs can give you new crafting options, new quests, and start to make your base feel alive. I set up a nice little farm near my starter house and a little fenced-in pasture for some goats, but I'm very excited to move on from this starter zone and spend a couple hours building a new crib someplace else. So, on to one of my favorite elements in this game are the grappling hooks, which I showed before, but also the gliders. At least in a video game, I love being on a tall structure and taking that leap of faith before deploying a glider to coast down to a faraway place. It just feels right. And the grappling hook, the grappling hook's awesome. I picked up a perk that lets you be able to pull yourself to boss enemies, and I can zip into these boys like a scout from Attack on Titan. It's super cool. I'm loving it. You can also use it to pull flying enemies out of the sky, which helps to take out some of the more annoying ads in the game. So another main mechanic of this game is the Shroud, which is a dangerous zone that players can't stay in for too long. as eventually it will kill you. Enemies are present here in large numbers, but players need to conquer them in order to clear areas of the Shroud, and in the process obtain new skills and items from it. It adds an extra layer to the game as you have to race against the clock to hastily take out a huge boss or group of monsters and get out before it's too late. I really see this game blowing up in the near future as it gets closer to a full release. Console support, new content, new mechanics are all expected in the near future. There's currently a 2025 roadmap that's on their website that shows what they're putting out soon. But I'm most hoping for maybe PvP elements, potentially some mod support, which I believe would turn this into an extremely long-lasting game. But that is up to feedback from players and ultimately the developers themselves. But anyways, I'm trying to get all of the boys on here to sink a massive amount of time into this game, and just maybe it'll stay around for a really long time. To everyone still watching, go and check out Enshrouded, and you will not be disappointed. Thanks for watching, y'all. Keep it easy.